Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. This is CBC Windsor News. Thanks for watching. Tonight, police officers say they feel overwhelmed and undervalued. Plus, Windsor police are urging this suspect in attempted murder to turn himself in. We'll tell you more about the case. A new chapter at Caesars Windsor. It's where the province's first full-service retail sports book has just launched. And Ontario now has a carbon tax on industry. But what will happen with that revenue? We'll take a look later tonight. CBC News has obtained a copy of an internal survey of the Windsor Police Service. The results show the workplace there is improving, but the association that represents those officers says burnout is getting worse. The CBC's Jason Vio explains.
It's been horrific.
That's how the Windsor Police Association describes the last 4 months for officers across this country. 5 officers have died in the line of duty. Most recently, an OPP constable was shot and killed last month, allegedly by someone out on bail with a firearms ban. The local police association says that affects everyone with a badge.
We're a close-knit family, and we call ourselves a family, and that mentally puts a lot of stress on our members. It's a dangerous job. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
An internal Windsor Police survey captures some of these feelings too. It was obtained by CBC News through a Freedom of Information request. The survey shows 44% of those surveyed feel employee wellness is not improving at Windsor Police. That's an improvement, though, compared to 58% in 2020. Still, McCurdy says it's not good enough. One of the biggest burdens on officers right now, he says, is lower staffing levels. He says it's hard to find new recruits, which adds more stress onto those who protect our community.
Their mental health and wellness is absolutely paramount. You know, we're only as good as how we feel and how we feel physically and mentally. And if we're not feeling well, we're not doing any justice to our community. And we have to take care of our officers and our civilian members.
Windsor's new police chief calls the survey results a small win because of the improvements compared to the one 2 years ago. But Jason Belair says he's disappointed only about 1/3 of employees participated. What concerned him the most? Overall job satisfaction sits at an average of less than 7 out of 10.
If we can't make people here seem satisfied, or we can't encourage people to be satisfied, we know that's going to impact productivity.
Both the association and the chief say that comes from officers feeling valued and validated, which needs to come from the top. There were also improvements in employees feeling senior leaders are making more fair and balanced decisions, but only 18% believe the promotional process is based on merit, with both saying more needs to be done on the inside. The chief says these survey results will help shape decisions they make in the future. Jason Vio, CBC News, Windsor.
Windsor police are looking for this person captured on home surveillance in Forest Glade last week. They say they're a suspect in an attempted murder case, and they want him to turn himself in. This man flashed an identification badge knocking on the door of a home near Eastview Horizon Public School. Officers were later called to a home in the area where they found a woman seriously injured. She was taken to hospital for life-threatening injuries and is now in stable condition. Officers are not saying much more about the investigation, and they will not describe what type of weapon was used.
Based on our investigation thus far, there is no threat to public safety. This is a targeted incident, and this is based on corroborated information that we have gathered so far with our victim and other people we've spoken to.
It's been a long time coming, but it's finally here. Ontario's first full-service retail sports book is now open at Caesars Windsor. As Dale Molnar reports, the casino is betting this will help them bring people through the doors at pre-pandemic numbers.
Well, this is the Caesars Sportsbook. It's located now at the Legends Sports Lounge here on the gaming floor at Caesars Windsor. It's been 10 years in the making, but the people here at Caesars Windsor hope this will increase foot traffic.
We're going to take Jacksonville.
Hockey Hall of Famer Grant Fuhr placed the first bet at the new sportsbook betting window. The casino still has fewer than 50 people on layoff, and while the president of the casino can't say what the attendance levels are right now, he says they are getting back to normal levels with Canadian gamblers and an influx of Americans over the holidays. He's hoping the sportsbook will result in more jobs.
There's a couple of dozen working in the facility itself, But really what it does is it drives traffic into the building, so you're going to see more employment of whether it be cocktail servers, bartenders, dealers, things like that.
When I first spoke about it, we thought potentially 100 to 150 jobs and what that would create, whether it would be in the bartending, whether it be at the kiosks, all the food service, all that stuff, which was important to us.
Caesars introduced single sports betting in November with these kiosks, but now with this sports book, gamblers can place bets in person and collect their winnings here too.
It gives them a chance to compete first and foremost, because they couldn't do it with one arm tied behind their back with the U.S. having a service that we couldn't have over here.
I think it levels the playing field. I think what it is you might have a couple and the husband likes to bet on sports and she likes to play slots.
While online betting has been around since last April, Caesars officials believe the experience of in-person betting the sportsbook offers will make it competitive.
You're sitting in your bedroom, it's hard to, it's not like you can go to a restaurant, you can't go talk to somebody. So I think that's going to be the differentiation.
While this sportsbook is not as big as some in Las Vegas, a reporter that covers the gambling beat says the intimacy is also a selling point.
There's nothing like the camaraderie of rooting on a bet with your friends and family. People are going to enjoy this experience, and of course, you can enjoy a show. You can go and play some casino games as well. There's other things for you to do here as well, other than just come and watch sports.
Kevin Lafayette could not divulge how much revenue they feel they're going to make from this sports book. It is now open to the public. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
The CBC has a timely documentary on this move to sports betting. Tomorrow night, the Fifth Estate explores the sudden spike in gambling options, focusing on the ads. Experts in the United Kingdom say Canada is making a bad bet. The full program airs tomorrow at 9 on CBC TV and CBC Gem. City Council is looking at the newly proposed budget for this year. Inside, the biggest tax hike Windsor has seen in years. Council is looking at a 5.2% increase to your property tax bill. Now, this is not the final number. That will be decided in April. Here's what it would mean for your tax bill. Homes were last assessed in 2016, with the average home worth $164,000. That's a $3,000 tax bill. If your home was assessed at $600,000, it's an $11,000 bill. That's if this proposal goes ahead. This budget proposal is thick, and Council will hold public meetings this month. We'll have continued coverage here and on our website. CBC News has learned the Ford government expects to bring in more than $2 billion over the next 8 years from a carbon tax on big industries. What's unclear right now is what the government plans to do with the money. Our Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley has the story.
This plant in the Niagara region is creating low-carbon sources of energy for industry.
System here, flame modules, everything's working.
The technology takes wood waste products,
so that's the before, right?
and turns it into a high-intensity fuel, an alternative to coal.
The biocoal we produce allows heavy industrial users of fossil coal, so again, things like steel making, to stop using fossil coal and being able to use our product, which is made from woody residuals.
Steel plants are Ontario's biggest industrial producers of greenhouse gases. The province is now levying a carbon tax on their emissions, along with those from other large manufacturers, such as automakers, cement producers, chemical plants, and oil refineries. The Environment Ministry expects the fees will amount to more than $130 million this year, and the cumulative total by 2030 is forecast to be $2.2 billion. That poses a question for Doug Ford and his government. How will they spend the money?
Well, we have to reinvest it into protecting our climate, supporting our economy, and it's not, either or.
Ontario's big industrial emitters used to pay carbon pricing fees to the federal government. Ottawa earmarked that money for projects to help industries reduce emissions. Business groups want the Ford government to do pretty much the same.
The best use of that money is to invest in low carbon technologies that will get at some of the very hard to abate industries.
I think Ontario's got a great opportunity. If they do it right, this can be net beneficial to industry, but also, of course, net beneficial to the environment.
What do environmental groups want Ontario to do with the money?
Revenue from carbon pricing should be spent on clean economy initiatives.
Best use of the funds would be to invest in renewable energy projects like wind and solar to ensure that Ontario is replacing the many gas plants that are currently being used to generate electricity for the province.
What doesn't change with Ontario taking over carbon pricing for industry? The carbon tax that you pay on fuel at the pumps. That is still collected by the federal government and returned to Ontarians in income tax rebates. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
The political crisis in Haiti worsened this week. Its Senate dissolved when term limits expired on Tuesday. That means that there are no democratically elected institutions left, creating what experts are calling a de facto dictatorship. The current prime minister assumed power with the support of the international community, but they have not followed through on promises to hold a general election. Meanwhile, the United Nations is warning of what it calls alarmingly high levels of gang violence. Windsorite Jim Scott runs the organization Enable Haiti, which operates 3 orphanages in the country. Scott described a horrific ambush that took place when a pastor left the orphanage. He says the pastor was killed while trying to pick up money someone sent at the bank. Scott says it's been months since the children have been able to leave the compounds.
We are really trying to be cautious, but it's not easy. Our kids haven't left the orphanages in over a year. Our staff and their children are living inside our compounds. Our teachers and their children are living inside our compounds because our compounds are safe. They're fully guarded on all corners and at gates. And, thankfully, we have not had any attacks on any of our orphanages. We haven't had any attacks on any of our children.
Meanwhile, Canada will continue to offer humanitarian support to Haiti, but will not move beyond that. The United States wants a country to take the lead on the security situation. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was asked about that today, but did not directly answer the question. Let's take a live look outside there. We do have a special weather statement in effect for our region. Lots of rain expected tomorrow. Could bring us up to 30 millimeters. Colette Kennedy will be here after the break with a closer look. Stay with us. Some planes are back in the air across the United States after being grounded for hours this morning due to a computer system failure at the Federal Aviation Administration. The agency says departures resumed this morning, but delays and cancellations are continuing. And the glitch has affected travelers in Canada as well. CBC's Chris Reyes has this report from New York City.
Sorry for all the inconvenience, but like I say, this is a nationwide issue. It's not just a local issue.
That announcement went out in every airport in the U.S. after the Federal Aviation Administration issued a nationwide ground stop during air travel rush hour. Transport Secretary Pete Buttigieg says a critical system that alerts pilots of safety information went down at about 7 a.m.
For safety reasons, to make sure that every aircraft that took off was doing so safely, FAA implemented a ground stop lasting about an hour and a half.
It's yet another headache for travelers still recovering after massive delays and cancellations during the holiday season.
It's crazy. A lot of people out there that are struggling, so hopefully they can figure it out.
Well, it does make one wonder what would have happened. You would think that the FAA would have pretty solid computer systems, and this is kind of a surprise. I don't remember this ever happening before.
President Joe Biden says so far no evidence of a cyber attack.
We don't know. Okay, we'll find out.
At Pearson International in Toronto, passengers arrived after hours of delay from U.S. flights.
We're pretty tired and jet lagged, but I'm just happy to be back. It's nice being back home in Canada.
Our flight was supposed to leave at 6. We didn't leave until 9. Yeah, so we came from a 10 hours flight for a 3 hours wait for another 3 hours flight.
Secretary Buttigieg says the ground stop was done out of abundance of caution.
These kinds of disruptions should not happen, and my primary interest, now that we've gotten through the immediate disruptions of the morning, is understanding exactly how this was possible and exactly what steps are needed to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Transport Minister Omar Alghabra says Canada is watching the issue closely.
We're going to stay in coordination with our U.S. partners to understand what had happened and what can we do to avoid similar interruptions.
The FAA lifted the ground stop just after 9 a.m. and flights are returning to normal. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
Colette Kennedy joins us now for a look at our weather forecast. And Colette, we're getting ready for some rain.
We are getting ready for what will mostly be a rain event. That's right, into southwestern Ontario. And there's two things I get asked about a lot at this time of year. One, when are we going to have more sunshine? And the other is, when are we going to have more snowfall? Well, there's going to be some of both. We're going to see one of those, okay, the sunshine, and that's for the weekend. Snowfall, not so much in this area. Elsewhere in the province, whole different story. So I'll take you through what's happening as the system moves in. And by the way, you know, the systems that we're seeing are the same ones, essentially, that have been coming in along the west coast and really hitting Northern California. It takes them a few days. They're in a different form, and then they make their way east into our neck of the woods. So we're looking at the temperatures. Generally, things have been mild. I mean, we were up to over 5, almost 6 degrees for today. Tonight, the temperature is going to be nearly steady. So 3, maybe even coming up towards 4 degrees or 5 by tomorrow morning. So not much of a change, definitely above freezing, so that we're talking about rainfall. I do want to give you the heads up that eventually it'll turn into a little bit of light, wet snow for us. And the winds will be blowing when that happens. So they're going to be gusty 50, 60 kilometers an hour. So it should be a brief period, but we really could be seeing some reduced visibility with that snow kind of blowing around, what bit we will be getting. So a little bit of light precipitation that's gone through. That's child's play. That's nothing to do with the heart, the main part of this storm. So that moves along. And then I have to tell you about the special weather statement. For the areas along the north shore of both Lake Ontario and Lake Erie, back into southwestern Ontario, it's about the rainfall and the rainfall amounts. 20 to 35, even 40 millimeters. This area, closer to Georgian Bay, into the special weather statement. Actually, it picks up, though, at about Waterloo. That has to do with some freezing drizzle tonight. So kind of two different things in the special weather statement. Through the overnight hours, you see where that mixing is and why the weather statement is there. And you're about to see why the weather statement is here. And that's because as we get into, especially tomorrow afternoon, that precipitation in the heart of the system comes through and it gets heavier in nature. And that's when we're going to see things pretty slow and wet on the roadways. days, tomorrow into the afternoon and early evening. Then we get that changeover to some wet snow. It makes haste as it goes through, and that's why likely we'll see a trace to a couple of centimeters probably. And then high pressure digs in, and it's going to carve out some sunshine for the weekend. This area here, the area most likely to see some ice accretion from freezing drizzle tonight. A look at Windsor, 15 to 20 millimeters probably, but you're seeing more significant amounts. Chatham, Kent, 30 or maybe even a little more than that. And the snowfall potential, the really heavy stuff, that's coming into eastern Ontario. No wonder they're into a winter storm watch, and across the border into Quebec, snowfall warnings and winter storm warnings. Significant amounts, more than 40 centimeters in some of those cases there. If you want to go skiing, that's where you want to head.
Yeah, you don't want to ski in Windsor. Thanks for that.
But you do want to see that sun. I did just want to point that out.
Yes, we look forward to that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
When we come back, the end of the Leaders Summit in Mexico and a big win for Canada. Stay with us. Premier Doug Ford today denied Bill 124 had a negative effect on retaining nurses. That's despite a document from his own government obtained by CBC News that says the bill, which limits wages for public sector employees, is a challenge to keeping staff in this province. Lorenda Redekop takes us through the latest.
The Premier toured a pharmacy in Etobicoke, re-announcing a recent change, allowing pharmacists to prescribe for some minor conditions. He was repeatedly asked about Bill 124.
If it had anything negative, that must be not accurate. Because
the Premier denied the bill is a problem. However, in the Health Ministry's transition binder for the incoming minister, that bill is listed as one challenge to retaining nurses. Ford then talked about a record number of new nurses being hired and repeatedly said the bill isn't an issue anymore.
Bill 124 is gone. Bill 124 is lapsed, so Bill 124 is lapsed.
However, for some workers, the 3-year bill is still in place. Contracts for hospital nurses expire at the end of March.
I always have to be a prudent fiscal manager with the taxpayers' money. We just can't be out there spending willy-nilly, and as people are working their backs off, they're taxed to the brink right now. But it is lapsed, and the nurses, I want to thank them. They deserve every penny they get.
A court has ruled Bill 124 unconstitutional. However, the province is appealing to keep it in place. On another healthcare topic, wanting more money from the federal government, Ford says he could live with strings being attached to that extra money.
Yes, everyone has to be accountable.
Increased money for health is something all the provinces are calling for. Ford sounded positive about an agreement.
As long as it's transparent and people can see it and the feds can see it in the province, we're going to get there.
The City of Toronto is looking to Ford for more money, with a $1.4 billion hole due to pandemic spending.
So we're going to work with Mayor Tory. We always come up with a solution together.
Just a few of the issues the Premier will be facing this year. Lorenda Redicomp, CBC News, Toronto.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has wrapped up his visit to the North American Leaders Summit in Mexico City. He sat down for a one-on-one session with Mexico's President López Obrador. A key part of their discussion centered on energy. Both Canada and the U.S. have been pushing to participate in rebuilding Mexico's electrical grid. Also today, Canada and Mexico won an important trade victory over the United States. CBC's David Cochran has the details.
The Prime Minister offering the personal touch at an event to promote trade, speaking to Mexican business leaders about the merits of their continental partnership.
NAFTA was never a zero-sum game. It was always win, win, win.
Or in some cases, win-win-lose. Mexico and Canada have won a trade dispute with the U.S., settling a disagreement over rules of origin for auto parts.
Our supply chains are deeply integrated. This is an important decision, and we're very pleased with the outcome.
Had the U.S. won, Canadian parts producers would be forced to use fewer components from Asia, driving up costs and making them less competitive, potentially costing them jobs and contracts.
Canadian automotive suppliers employ about 100,000 people here, and it's a very big relief for those people.
News of this ruling leaked in December, but it wasn't released publicly until now, one day after the U.S. president left the summit in Mexico City, avoiding an awkward setback for the president at a summit about working together. And so this summit ends with a shared victory for Canada and Mexico, one centered on the industry at the very heart of the Canada-U.S.-Mexico trade agreement. David Cochran, CBC News, Mexico City.
Canada and the United States have reached a deal that promises to clear up a major border backlog. The agreement is supposed to help speed up the interview process for the Nexus Trusted Traveler program.
Canada and the United States have agreed to significantly enhance the Nexus processing applications capacity by 50%. This is a win-win for Canada and the United States. It's good for Canadian travelers. It's good for the economy on both sides.
The public safety minister made the announcement at the North American Leaders Summit in Mexico City last night. Canadian air travelers will be able to interview at Canadian Border Service offices near certain Canadian airports. The applicants will then conduct a similar interview at U.S. Customs before boarding a flight to the United States. Marco Medicino says the new version of the program will help clear a backlog of about 100,000 Nexus applications. And that is it for CBC Windsor News. For news anytime, go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. And you can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.